I'm Jake, and this is the story of the worst night of my life. It started like any other Friday night in Katie's basement. Dim lights, beanbags, and the faint smell of popcorn set the scene. Katie, Mark, Sarah, and I had been friends forever, and our ritual of playing games and watching movies was a comfort. Katie suggested we play Truth or Dare. It seemed harmless enough, but this time, it felt different. The air was thick with tension, and Katie's eyes gleamed with unsettling mischief. "Jake," she started, locking her gaze on me, "Truth or Dare?" "Dare, of course," I smirked. She grinned, a grin that sent chills down my spine. "I dare you to go to the old Miller house and bring back something from inside." The Miller house was infamous in our town, abandoned and rumored to be haunted. But I couldn't back down. "All right," I said, trying to sound brave. Katie handed me a flashlight. The walk to the Miller house was eerie. Fog rolled in, reducing visibility. The house loomed over me, its windows shattered, and the wooden boards creaking ominously. I stepped inside. The air was stale, the smell of decay overwhelming. My heart pounded as I ventured deeper. The flashlight flickered and went out. Panic set in, and I heard a whisper. "Jake." I froze, shining the flashlight around. Nothing but shadows. "Who's there?" I called out. Silence. I grabbed an old picture frame, thinking it would suffice, and turned to leave. As I retraced my steps, I felt a cold breeze. The whispers grew louder. "Jake, don't go." I broke into a run, stumbling through the dark hallway. The front door was in sight when a cold hand grasped my ankle. I screamed, kicking free, and bolted out of the house. I burst into Katie's basement, breathless and trembling. "There's something in that house," I panted. Before I could finish, the lights flickered, and the room grew cold. The whispers started again. "Jake." We all heard it this time. The basement door slammed shut, and the whispers grew louder. The flashlight flickered, revealing shadowy figures with glowing eyes. They surrounded us. "Join us, Jake." I screamed, the sound swallowed by darkness. The last thing I saw was Katie's terrified face before the shadows consumed us all. No one ever found us. The town whispered about the kids who played Truth or Dare and vanished. The Miller house still stands, waiting for its next victims. And I am still here, trapped in the darkness, waiting for someone to dare to find me.
My name is Arav, and I've always loved Holi, the colors, the laughter, the sense of community. This year, however, Holi became a nightmare. My cousin Ravi invited us to celebrate Holi at our ancestral home in a small village. The house, abandoned for years, was perfect for a grand celebration. The night before Holi, we gathered around a bonfire. Ravi's grandmother, Dadi, told us stories of the house, including a chilling tale of the Holi of 1947, when partition riots turned the festival into a bloodbath. She spoke of spirits that never left. We laughed it off as just a spooky story. The next day, Holi began with a burst of colors. Amidst the revelry, I saw a woman in a white sari stained with red. Her hollow eyes and sorrowful expression sent chills down my spine. She vanished when I blinked. I tried to ignore it, but strange things began happening. The colors darkened, the music turned eerie, and an oppressive silence fell over us despite the noise. That night, as we gathered inside the house, I heard a whisper. Following the sound, I ended up in a cold, dark room where the woman appeared again. "Help me," she whispered. "They won't let me go." Flooded with visions of blood and fire, I realized the house trapped souls from that fateful Holi. I rushed back to the others, shaking. Dadi understood and suggested a ritual to honor the dead. As we chanted, the spirits appeared, including the woman in the white sari. They smiled gratefully and then vanished. The house felt lighter, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Holi was never the same for me after that. It remained a celebration of colors and joy, but I could never forget those haunted eyes. Every year, as I smear colors on my friends and family, I say a silent prayer for those lost souls, hoping their pain is finally at an end. Holi is a time of renewal and forgiveness, and I, Arav, will never forget the Holi that taught me the true meaning of those words.
My name is Emily, and I've always been a pretty average student at Greenwood High School. Life was routine and uneventful, but everything changed on that one fateful day. It started like any other day in our 9th grade class. I was doodling absent-mindedly on my notebook when the classroom door creaked open. Our teacher, Mrs. Thompson, walked in with a new student trailing behind her. "Class, this is Alex," she announced. "He's just transferred here. Please make him feel welcome." Alex scanned the room, his eyes dark and hollow, and took the empty seat in front of me. As he sat down, I was hit with a sudden, nauseating smell. It was like something had died and rotted away. I scrunched my nose and glanced around, but no one else seemed to notice. The rest of the day, I couldn't shake off that smell. It was coming from Alex's backpack, I was sure of it. After class, I approached Mrs. Thompson. "Mrs. Thompson, there's a horrible smell coming from Alex's backpack," I whispered. "It smells like something rotten." Mrs. Thompson looked at me with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. "Emily, it's probably just a piece of fruit he forgot to throw away. You're the closest one to him, so you noticed it. I'm sure it's nothing." I wasn't convinced, but I nodded and left. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the smell. Something about it was deeply unsettling. The next day, I arrived at school to find police cars parked out front. A crowd of students had gathered, whispering and pointing. As I pushed through, I saw Alex being led out in handcuffs. My heart pounded as I ran up to one of the officers. "Why are you arresting him?" I asked, my voice trembling. The officer looked at me and replied,
"Aren't you the one who complained about the rotten smell from his backpack?"
"Yes, but what does that have to do with a crime?" I stammered. "What did you find in his bag?" The officer's face darkened.
"We didn't find anything inside his bag, but the rotten smell you noticed was coming from the backpack itself. The inside of the backpack is lined with several human faces, meticulously stitched together."
I felt the blood drain from my face as his words sank in. My legs wobbled and I barely managed to stay upright. "Human faces," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He nodded grimly.
"Yes, we believe Alex has been involved in multiple disappearances over the past few years. The faces in his backpack match the descriptions of several missing persons. You did the right thing by reporting the smell."
As the officer walked away, my mind raced. I had been sitting just inches away from a psychopath, completely unaware. The thought made me shudder. The school was closed for the rest of the day as the police continued their investigation. I went home, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of those human faces, grotesquely stitched together inside Alex's backpack. Days passed, but the horror of that day never left me. I learned that Alex had been living with his uncle, who had no idea about his nephew's dark side. The news spread like wildfire, and the whole town was in shock. I still go to Greenwood High, but things are different now. I'm different. I no longer take things at face value, and I trust my instincts more than ever. The memory of that rotten smell, and what it led to, will haunt me forever. And every now and then, when I'm alone, I can't help but wonder if there are more people like Alex out there, hiding in plain sight, with their own secrets waiting to be discovered.
My name is Elizabeth Montgomery, and I've carried the weight of this story for years, a story that still haunts me. It was the early 1900s, and I was a student at Huntingdon College, a place known for its beautiful Gothic architecture, and eventually, for something far darker. I remember the day Margaret arrived. She was different from the rest of us, always dressed in red from head to toe. Her fiery red hair, crimson dresses, and ruby slippers earned her the nickname, the Red Lady. Margaret was shy, reserved, and painfully lonely. Despite her wealthy background, she never fit in. The other girls, including myself, whispered about her, often avoiding her like she carried some unseen curse. Margaret and I shared a dorm room. She was quiet, almost invisible in her presence, and our interactions were minimal. One particularly harsh winter night, I woke to find Margaret gone. The air in our room was frigid, and an overwhelming sense of dread settled in my chest. Her red scarf was missing, too. I assumed she had gone for a walk to clear her head, and thought little of it. Hours passed, and Margaret did not return. Anxiety gnawed at me, so I reported her disappearance. A search party was quickly organized, and we scoured the campus, calling out her name in vain. As dawn approached, we found her. Margaret's lifeless body hung from a tree on the edge of the campus, the red scarf tied tightly around her neck. Her eyes were open, wide with terror, and her red dress swayed gently in the cold breeze. The college was in an uproar. Margaret's death was ruled a suicide, but rumors of foul play spread like wildfire. Some said she had been driven to despair by the constant bullying. Others whispered of something far more sinister. Regardless, the tragedy cast a dark shadow over Huntingdon. After Margaret's death, strange occurrences began. Doors would open and close on their own, and unexplained cold drafts swept through the dormitories. Some claimed to see a figure in red moving silently through the halls, her eyes glinting with unspoken sorrow. I dismissed these stories as mere figments of overactive imaginations until one night. That winter's night, I was studying alone in my new dorm room. The air turned icy, and an overwhelming sense of dread filled me. Soft footsteps echoed behind me. I turned, my heart pounding, and saw Margaret, or what remained of her. The Red Lady stood there, her face pale, eyes hollow, and the red scarf still tied around her neck. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. Margaret's ghost moved closer, reaching out with cold, translucent fingers. "Why didn't you help me?" she whispered, her voice echoing with sorrow and accusation. I fled my room and never returned to Huntingdon. Margaret's ghost haunted my dreams and waking moments, her voice a constant reminder of my guilt. I had been a bystander to her suffering, and now I was the keeper of her story, a story that has haunted Huntingdon College and my soul ever since.
My name is Jessica Evans, and my life changed forever the day I found the doll. It was a warm, sunny afternoon when my family moved into the old house on Maple Street. It was a fixer-upper, but my parents were excited about its potential. While exploring the overgrown backyard, I stumbled upon an old, dusty box buried under a pile of leaves. Inside the box was a porcelain doll, dressed in a tattered, vintage dress. Its glassy blue eyes seemed to follow me as I lifted it out. Despite feeling a chill run down my spine, I took the doll inside, thinking it was a unique find. That night, I placed the doll on a shelf in my bedroom and went to bed. Around midnight, I was awakened by soft, whispering voices. At first, I thought it was my parents, but as I listened closer, I realized the whispers were coming from my room. The doll's eyes seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. "Jessica. Jessica," the voice hissed, sending a wave of terror through me. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. Frozen with fear, I watched as the doll's expression twisted into a sinister smile. The next morning, I convinced myself it was just a bad dream, but the occurrences grew worse. Objects in my room would move on their own, and I often felt a cold, malevolent presence watching me. I tried to tell my parents, but they dismissed it as my imagination running wild. One night, as I lay in bed, the doll's head turned slowly to face me. It began to speak, its voice a raspy whisper. "I am Annabelle, and you have set me free." Horrified, I grabbed the doll and ran to the backyard, intending to bury it again. But no matter how hard I tried, the ground wouldn't accept it. It was as if the earth itself rejected the cursed object. Defeated, I returned to my room, where the doll sat, waiting on my bed. From that night on, Annabelle's influence grew stronger. She invaded my dreams, turning them into nightmarish visions of fire and darkness. During the day, she whispered cruel, terrifying things, slowly breaking my spirit. I became withdrawn, isolated from my friends and family. Desperate, I researched the house's history and discovered that it had belonged to a family who vanished mysteriously in the 1800s. The doll, Annabelle, was believed to be cursed, tied to the disappearance of the children who once lived there. Armed with this knowledge, I sought out a local priest, Father Thomas, known for his expertise in the occult. He agreed to help and came to our house, armed with holy water and a crucifix. As he began the exorcism, the doll writhed and shrieked, the room filling with a chilling wind. "Leave this child," Father Thomas commanded, his voice strong and unwavering. The doll's eyes glowed with a fierce, unnatural light, and for a moment, I thought it was all over. But with a final, agonized scream, the light faded, and the doll fell lifeless to the floor. The house felt lighter, the oppressive presence lifted. Father Thomas took the doll away, ensuring it would be sealed and buried in consecrated ground, never to torment anyone again. Life slowly returned to normal, though the memories of those terrifying nights lingered. My name is Jessica Evans, and this is my story. Be cautious of the things you unearth, for some secrets are better left buried.